Welcome back, class. Here today we're going to be talking about the volume of prisms and cylinders. We will be adding two new formulas to our list of formulas, and they will be two volume formulas. Now, the volume of a solid is the number of cubic units contained in its interior. Understand that. It's the number of cubic units contained in its interior. We've been talking about area and surface area. And where area is two-dimensional, surface area, we can draw it into a net and it becomes two-dimensional as well. When we're referring or talking about volume, it's the number of cubic units that are in its interior. Now, here, let's look at an example. I can get that to work. Notice that we have a cube here. And in that cube, there are all these other little bitty different cubes. Notice that this is one entire cube right here. So if I had the ability to go in and count every one of these cubes that not only I see, but also that are inside here, that is how we have volume. If these were all 1 unit, this is a 4 by 4 by 4. If we plugged it into our volume formula, we would be able to figure out its cubic units. And that's the way that we look at volume. Volume is cubic units. Now, the formula we have for the volume of a prism is right here. Volume equals area of the base times the height. Remember, capital B is area of the base, and H is the height of the prism, or that perpendicular distance. So if we're looking at this particular one, the perpendicular distance from the two bases. And this is for a prism. It's a bit in there, but that is the volume formula for a prism. So we have to identify what the shape of the base is. Well, if I'm looking at this shape, notice that its base is in the form of a rectangle. So volume equals area of the base times the height. Well, how do we find the volume, the area for a rectangle? Well, it's simply base times its height. We're not talking about height of the figure, but the height of the two-dimensional shape. So it would be 8 times 4. Then simply times its height, 6. I think whenever growing up, you always heard volume is length times width times height. Well, it's very similar to that. But you'll notice here in a little bit that that won't always work. So we're talking about volume, plugging in our values. So 4 times 8 gives us 32. 32, parentheses, 32 times 6 is 192. And that is cubic inches. And notice how our exponent changes here. It is now 3 because we're talking about three-dimensional volume. It's cubic values. Okay? Now, talked about how length times width times height won't always work. Well, here is an example of why. Here we have still a prism, and it is a pentagonal prism. Here's its base. Here's the front of it. So we have to find volume for it. And in order to find volume, we have to find the area of the base. Now, we particularly do not have a formula for how to find that. We've not worked on that one. So we have been given in this particular problem that the area of the base is 172.5 square inches. That's what the area of the base is right here. Well, if knowing that, and we know that the height, the distance between the two bases, is 8 inches, we can find the volume. So the volume equals 172.5 times 8. So plugging that into our calculator, we get 1,380. And that is cubic inches. So if we had the ability to draw all those little bitty cubes in there, 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch, we would come out with a little over or almost 1,400 of those cubes. Finding the volume. Example number 3. Let's look here. So it's got it messed up a little bit. This is 8 inches. over here. That's what our diagram had. 8 inches. So here we're looking at this particular prism. Notice that the shape of its base is in the form of a triangle. Right here. So here's our base. So we're still going to find volume the same way. Volume equals area of the base times the height. And we have to use our formula for the shape of or the area of a triangle. Now remember, recall that the area of a triangle is base times its height divided by 2. So base times height divided by 2. And then we're simply going to multiply that times its height of the prism, which is 12. So plugging that into our calculator, we have 8 times 6 is 48, divided by 2 is 24. We then have 24 times 12, which is 288. And that is cubic inches. So the volume for this triangular prism is 288 cubic inches. Okay. Well, enough with prisms. Let's move on to cylinders. Now, cylinders, recall, is like a soup can or a coffee cup or something of that nature. But the volume, to find the volume of a cylinder, it can be used using this particular formula. Now, it is very simply the same. Volume equals the area of the base times the height. But think about what a cylinder is. A cylinder has a base that is a circle. And if it's always going to be a circle, let's just go ahead and make ourselves our formula easier. What's the area of a circle? Well, pi r squared, and then we'll multiply it times the h. So we can simply go ahead and take out this part because we don't have to figure out what the shape of the base is for a cylinder. We always know that it will be a circle, so we can always start using the formula for area of a circle. So we have our two parts. We have our radius. We have our height. From here to here is 8 centimeters. So let's find the volume for this cylinder. So volume equals pi. R is 4. We're going to square it. Multiply that times 8. So we have 16 times 8 pi, which is what? 128 pi. Now, once again, we could leave it in this form of a 128 pi cubic centimeters if our directions asked us for an exact value. If it ever asked us to round, we always want to plug in 3.14 for pi. Gets us 401.92. Sorry. And then we would round accordingly. If it says round to the 100th, it rounds to the 10th, or if it says round to the nearest whole number, we would round accordingly. And that's cubic centimeters. So the volume for this particular cylinder is 401.92 cubic centimeters. And another example. We have the following cylinder. Now it has a radius of 5 and a height of 12. So volume equals pi r squared h. So pi 5 squared times, h. We know what h is. We're not having to guess it. H is 12. So 5 squared is 25 times 12. Pi. 25 times 12 is 300. That gives us 300 pi cubic centimeters. And if it asked us to round, we're going to plug that in. And we actually come in to 924 cubic centimeters. We'll plug in pi. Hope you didn't lose you here, because all I did is simply say 300 times pi. I did not write that. I need to. We went 300 times 3.14. So we went from here back to here. And that's how we got that number. So, two new formulas for volume, or two new formulas, period. They are on volume of a prism and volume of a cylinder. So basic thing is we need to understand what our shape is, what the shape of its base is, and being able to apply, plug in, and solve our different formulas.